Hello, everybody. I hope you all have been having a good Monday and had a good weekend. I am here with my good friend Serp, and we are going to be doing a presidential tier list because I'm told that tier lists get the maximum number of views for the minimal amount of effort. How you doing today, man?
There you go. I'm doing good. I mean, I was busy in my life for a while, with a lot of personal stuff, so I wasn't making videos. But I've been trying to have a streak of them for the last month or so. I have videos set up through January at this point. I don't know how long the streak is. I tend to like to do seasons more than just I like seasons more than try and just push if I don't have something. So I just try to make a bunch of videos at once and then upload them. So kind of in the middle of a season, if you will.
Yeah, we've had a
I'm
couple good schizo videos from you lately.
oh, what was the schizo video?
Autogynephilia. Uh,
Oh yeah,
we had
I read through a lot of those books at once about
with the Sketch Saturday contest
transsexuality
one.
and ooh yeah, but
Um, so,
yeah, I don't know. I have a background in history. You have more of a background in political science. Um, it's just kind of an interesting topic. It's something that apparently everybody that has some knowledge of American history really like to make this tier list. If you go on Wikipedia, there is like a book length like article or whatever you want to call it on Wikipedia or a post about um just who's the best and the worst, and there's like different theories or how American academia
and
has
there's
changed
like a
over time that's
conservative
flipped
one and a
people
liberal
around.
one.
Yes, there's like a libertarian school, and then the like certain people with wokeism have caused people to like drop substantially down. Like Woodrow Wilson used to be like considered one of the greatest presidents when academia was more socialist leaning, and now because academia isn't socialist anymore and it's woke now, he's considered one of like the worst.
Is
But at the same
FDR
time,
been thrown under the
like
bus
libertarians
yet,
hate him.
or is that in the
He
process?
still hovers at the top.
Okay, because I feel like eventually they'll throw him under the bus.
It's just kind of weird the people that they do keep.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. We could talk about that as we go through each person and how they've been viewed historically and how it might have changed or not.
Okay.
Um, Somebody that is an aside, I guess, because I'm just kind of ADHD or something right now. Is Eisenhower has went from like good in the middle, like the goodish side of the middle, and now even within like liberals consider him one of the greatest presidents, which is interesting. I
Yeah.
think you have a pretty big soft spot for him.
Yeah. I like Ike. It's the other thing is yeah, and we'll get to this. A lot of it is also just kind of ideologically. Like, there's certain people who I think we're both gonna put as like number in the top five, who I think are just unarguably great. But like, you
Mm-hmm.
could argue that Woodrow Wilson was a great president in that he brought America to like the world stage, and America was extremely like it was just a very prestigious time. America was taken seriously by all the big countries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's just kind of like one of the things that really defines this and makes it difficult is that action makes you considered a good president, whether or not the action is good or not,
Hmm.
somehow in a lot of the minds of historians. So Eisenhower and Coolidge presided over prosperity, or like James Monroe, um, they were presidents over prosperity. America was doing very good, very healthy, just a lot of like good times for the country. But because they didn't preside over a crisis, then they're not considered great presidents, or they may have even prevented a crisis. But because there was no crisis, even if they were, could have even have been better than a president that presided over a crisis by preventing an outright crisis, they're marked down. And
Or
somebody
they
who
did
could have
nothing,
caused a
or they did nothing when it was a good idea to do nothing.
yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes you have people that were over crises that they caused, and then they get
Yeah.
pushed really high, and they fixed a crisis they caused, like James Madison or JFK, and then that causes them to be pushed really high by action, and then you just kind of have like is like a lot of stuff comes up of like, are you think America should exert influence globally? Do you think America should only exert influence within the Americas, or do you think like pure isolationism and that kind of taint a lot of this too?
Right. Right.
But are we gonna start with the best, the numero uno?
Okay. Sure.
Um,
So I guess we're gonna start with George Washington. I'm gonna say S. Do you have a objection to that?
I don't think that you could say anything other. I think even wokus say S because um, whether or not you agree with the American system, the system would not have functioned without the president that he
You mean
set
the
up.
precedent? Sorry, I always get it mixed up too.
Sorry, no, I'm stuffed up. The precedent that he set, you couldn't really have the presidency without his precedent. And when you look at all the other republics in Latin America and how, um, you know, regardless of their contents as a country, how unstable they are compared to America, a lot of that has to do with the precedent that the first president set up in those republics. And by taking two terms, by not exerting power, allowing there to develop a balance of powers, and just trying to rule, even if he was de facto a federalist, trying to rule above the parties that were being established at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and just acting in a higher role than most republics do historically for its leader, but below a monarch. Just a lot of that stuff
What was it
in
that
how he acts.
George said? If he relinquishes power, that he's the greatest man who's ever lived, or something like that.
I mean, the relinquishing power really helped establish the country as a republic.
Mm-hmm.
Had he ruled till death, which was there, right? I mean, Napoleon and Cromwell and almost every first president in Latin America did, the country would be drastically different.
Mm-hmm. So I think everybody likes Washington. Adams.
Uh, Not the best.
I'm not really sure. I was thinking C, maybe.
You could put him there, and then we could move him around. The thing is that when you get to Adams and a lot of these earlier presidents, you're running up against a lot of difficulty of, do you count what they did before or after they were president as part of them being a president? Like Washington, it's like clearly his role in the American Revolution is going to taint your view of him. His importance in the War of Independence, the Revolution, or whatever, really is going to taint your point of view of him in a positive
Or
light.
I guess there's the
and
American.
the same thing with John Adams.
You know what? I'm gonna put him in B because wasn't the American system largely created under him?
No.
It wasn't. That was Washington. Okay.
The Federalist Party broke down under John Adams. There was a war within Hamilton and a faction between Hamilton and John Adams. And John Adams was unpopular within the Federalists, and he was the last Federalist president. And he almost got America trapped within the quasi-war of the French. So it's one of those things where it's like he's defined for preventing the war of the French, but in the process,
that he started.
Yeah, that he kind of started, and that in the process he did the Alien and Sedition Acts. That where he revokes a lot of privileges of enshrined within the Bill of Rights.
Is it like the OG Patriot Act?
Yes, he made the OG Patriot Act, but way worse than the Patriot Act, and just imprison anybody that would criticize him. And then he was wildly unpopular, got curb stomped by Jefferson.
It didn't help the Federalist
defeat.
Party imprisoning all his political rivals.
Yeah, I mean, the Federalist Party collapses after the end of the War of 1812, ultimately. I mean, we'll get into that, but...
I'm going to say C for now.
And then in the lame duck period, he tries to slam as many courts appointments as he
don't we have
can
him to thank?
Power.
Don't we have him to blame for judicial review at the Supreme Court?
Yes, that is a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Jefferson. A?
S.
You're gonna say S. So yeah. I know Louisiana Purchase, but what was like his domestic policies like?
So he again with all of these first three presidents and ultimately falls out under Madison is that all of them are trying to prevent America from being pulled into the Napoleonic Wars and the French Revolutionary Wars.
Right.
And so Adams does so by the quasi-war, the naval war with the French, and there's an undeclared naval war with the French, but it ultimately doesn't boil over into full-fledged war. And then Jefferson, he stops trading, and he causes an economic recession or depression within a second term by shutting down a lot of the ports.
I mean, shouldn't Jefferson be, because I don't remember exactly, but wasn't there a major recession? So shouldn't he maybe be an A?
I'm sorry, but he bought Montana. So, plus I tend to view presidents that have a sweeping vision of America and establish America, like a great future for the country, and that they will reap the rewards going on, is very important. So I believe any westward expansion or any push westward, I think, is ultimately, for the most part, the most positive thing that almost any of the presidents do.
How much did he contribute to the War of 1812? Because wasn't he very pro-French?
He was out. That was Madison. He was out of office by then.
No, but wasn't he?
He was trying to stop it.
Oh, he was.
So he didn't want to get involved in Napoleonic Wars. That's where the whole blockade came.
Adams wanted to sort of enter on Britain's side, and or was the quasi-war with Britain or with France?
It was with France.
Yeah,
they're trying to prevent a war of France.
Because the Federalists were pro-British and the Republicans were pro-French.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the time, like Adams and Washington were considered too pro-English, right? Because we just fought the war with them, and we'd ultimately fight a war with them again with Madison.
Okay, so you know what? I'll go. You convince me. We'll put Jefferson at. Was it more than double the size of America?
I don't know exactly how it goes, but at least doubled the size of the country. The economic resources and the water resources that were established there, the mineral resources.
It kind of set America on the path to becoming a great power. It's hard to imagine. I don't know. Say if that area was American Indian majority to this day and was some kind of like landlocked Bolivia. Imagine how in America was just on the East Coast. Imagine how different America would be. Right. Jefferson, by buying it, kind of inevitably set America on the course to be a great power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Madison.
This is where I find him to be unbelievably difficult to rank. Just because he is the framer of the Constitution, so his shadow is as big as Washington.
He initially a Federalist?
No, he sided pretty heavily with Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
I guess initially he would be, in the sense that he co-wrote the Federalist Letters,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately he would come down on the side of Jefferson and become a stalwart of the Democratic Republicans. The reason that it's really hard is that the War of 1812 is arguably the second greatest crucible in the history of the country. But he's a primary cause of that war, so he solved his own
I
problem.
mean, the end result was basically that reconciliation between Britain and America, and it worked out pretty good for both sides.
I mean, says the Canadian,
Mm-hmm.
because you beat us.
Well, I don't know. The narrative in Canada is that both America and Canada won, but the Amerindians lost.
I
Uh,
know, but Canada won. Canada defeated a much more populous country, and prevented the unification. Like, I mean, America did terribly in the War of 1812.
well, I
Britain
mean,
was fighting the Napoleonic Wars, and we got sucked into it. Like Japan and like World War II, we thought we'd conquer some colonial territory easily and unify Anglo America, and then three different invasions were repelled, and several prominent coast cities were destroyed, including Washington, D.C. itself. Um,
ultimately,
I
though, I
mean,
think
the
it
war
did.
ultimately was a status quo antebellum, but
I do think it ultimately
it was
helped to
pretty
pave the
hairy.
way towards normalization of relations, and I think ultimately they was. I think ultimately it was probably better for Britain that America left because then they had an English speaking country they could trade with without having to pay for the defense of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of like thinking about the Louisiana Purchase, he kind of bundled the pretty easy conquest of Canada.
Is
But
B okay for Madison? Maybe.
I feel like he should be B. I feel like he can't enter into like S tier.
Okay.
But like in terms of like leaders in American history, he's S tier, but not as presidents. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
I agree. Monroe, I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, S, hard S.
Um,
Same
Min-
thing with Jefferson, just kind of established um, the destiny of the country.
well, Monroe was so popular, he ran unopposed, and the Federalists made him their candidate as well. They just ran a different
Hmm.
vice president. And it was, I remember the book I was reading about this said that because he combined a lot of policies of both parties, people thought that the party system might end
Hmm.
because of
The
Monroe.
era of good feelings.
Yeah, and from my understanding, he had very sensible economic policies
Yeah.
regarding like some tariffs, but not too many, some infrastructure projects, but not too many. And he
I
did, sorry, go on.
go ahead, and you were in the
And he
middle of
did
something.
set up America as kind of the inevitable hegemon of the Americas.
He also took control of Florida. Um, I think it's really important to kind of cast a view of the end of the War of 1812 and Monroe's presidency together. Because with the War of 1812, you kind of have the establishment of America seeing itself as a country which is able to stand on its own and was able to defend itself on an equal footing with Britain, at least more so than the War of Independence. And so America defeated, in its eyes, Britain twice. And then the Federalist Party collapses, and then there's a single party state, and just kind of like a positive age for America, just kind of really helped the American identity become established. I really feel like that era of good feelings is very important in establishing, I guess, patriotism and identity for the country. Period. And of course, we didn't use the words. The Monroe Doctrine established America as the de facto world, as the leader of the New World.
Well, this is the thing. Like, if you're like a hardcore isolationist, you might hate Monroe. But I think in terms of
Mhm.
making America like a great power, he was very important. John Quincy Adams,
Really low, like really bad.
like D or E.
Uh, maybe D, maybe
Why?
even
Why did
E.
you
I
put
don't
him
know.
so
We'll see as it
low?
goes on. Because of the corrupt compromise he had to prevent Jackson becoming rightfully president.
Right. Was his term even that, or was his term just? If I recall, wasn't it just basically he was a bit of a lame duck because no one thought he was legitimate?
Yes, and it was everything he did was a failure. He didn't accomplish anything, and he was just, viewed as this elitist, snatching out victory from the will of the people from the real winner Jackson with the backroom deal with Clay and everything.
How do you feel about Clay? Actually, out of curiosity.
It's interesting because we'll get into this after Jackson in that pre-World War, or not World War II, I guess I have brain worms, that pre-US Civil War period. You see the presidency really kind of shrink down and become unimportant.
Post Jackson, you mean?
Yeah, post Jackson. And so a lot of the reason for that is that in eras where the presidency becomes less important, the Congress really consumes a lot of power that the presidency has. And in that era, the House of Representatives and especially the Senate held a lot of power.
Wasn't
And
that
Henry
part
Clay
of
was
the
really part of
Whig
that.
party's? They were in favor of congressional instead of presidential supremacy, if memory serves.
That you might know more than me on that one, but that could make sense. But it was definitely an era of congressional supremacy over executive supremacy.
Okay, here's going to be one of the hardest people on the list, Andrew Jackson.
I feel like you should put him in C.
Really?
I don't. Yeah. What do you think? Did you think I would put him up higher or lower?
Yeah.
Higher
for the memes.
Well, this is one of those things like Madison where it's like him as a general in the Seminole War and in the War of 1812.
Although the Seminole War,
he's
didn't he
considered
just
a great
kind of
war.
like go off and invade Florida by himself? Like if I recall, Adams was in the middle of trying to buy it from Spain when he just unilaterally invaded. And it was kind of embarrassing.
Based.
And it was just kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most demagogic of all the presidents by far. There's really hard to find somebody who's more demagogic than him.
He did cause like a massive, the whole bank thing. So I don't know. It depends who you bank.
The bank thing is like, well, okay. Do you support Hamilton?
I do personally, yes.
And his system? Well, then we don't like Jackson because he went after the banking system that Hamilton created. I'm not anti-central bank. I'm sorry, libertarians. I'm not.
Well, couldn't you argue the bank
think
was
a
too
central bank's
dominated
good.
by private interests? Like that.
Yeah, but like, look, we have the Federal Reserve now, so
That's true.
like America had now the Federal Reserve better than Hamilton's central bank.
I mean,
Anyway,
the
but,
Americans. You can argue a lot. You can't say the American School of Economics didn't work quite well.
Yeah. I mean, the American School of Economics even pushed forward after like the collapse of the decapitation of the banking system. But it led to a pretty big economic downturn. And so like it's ironic because all these people historically in the earlier ranking of the presidents, when Jackson was in the top 10 or even sometimes in the top 5, right? He's on the $20 bill. So prior to, I mean, maybe even the 1990s, he was widely viewed as one of the greatest presidents. Like, but even when he was viewed as a great president, they always put like Van Buren at the bottom. But Van Buren inherited Jackson's economic disaster.
Well, I read
defined by a recession because of Jackson's policies.
Like I read a biography of Jackson. Most of his term was just him fighting with his cabinet. I forget how many commerce secretaries, but he like purged his cabinet, I think, more than just about any other president. I
Mhm.
think like I think people confuse the personality with his success in
Greatness.
office.
Hmm.
Like, or should we go with B?
You
Was
could
he?
keep him around C or B. The thing is that he was considered great because he was a champion of the common man, and so like earlier view of American history. So there's different models in how the presidents were ranked. So the earliest view is like a moral view where like the most corrupt presidents or the ones that have the most scandals are at the bottom, and then failures are above them, and then you go in so far, and then that was kind of like a moral model, and then after that you kind of had like the expansion of democracy, and then that goes into a more
Is that why
socialist over time. But with the
Jackson got so
expansion,
high because of the
yeah, because Jackson was really about, a lot of people view him as the expansion of democracy. So for a long time he was really high, but now with the rise of wokeism, he's obviously dropped to rock
yeah,
bottom.
'cause
He's like
because he was a white
hated.
nationalist.
Yeah, because of the Trail of Tears and the expulsion of American Indians
I'm
east of
gonna
the
be I'm
Mississippi.
gonna be an Effler. I actually don't. I think the Trail of Tears was wrong, but I think you and I disagree
Yeah.
on that, right?
Uh, I don't know. He shut up the Supreme Court when he did it. That's
I mean,
based.
that was based. I don't like people's property being taken away.
I don't. So you had like, you know, what like, what would it be? What's it in the like the Latin American system of like where somebody is like one like 12% Indian or like quarter Indian?
Castizos.
Yeah. So Jackson stole the land from a bunch of Castizos and deported them to Oklahoma.
I just don't like seizures of mass seizures of private property.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend it. I'm not that big of a supporter. I might
Uh
have memed earlier when we were younger and we haven't talked about it since then.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna leave him in C, although people are gonna get really angry. For the like, if we were going by memes, Jackson would be an S. As an actual president, I think he had kind of a mixed record. Van Buren, do you think it would be? Should he be in C or D?
I feel like with Van Buren, you just push him up to S, but with Van Buren, when you gotta, I tend to people that are very destructive of the country to put them at the bottom. But I feel like people whose presidencies are defined by
Oh, actually,
kind
no.
of
You know
just
what?
floundering.
Someone pointed out nullification. Okay, I'm gonna put Jackson up to B. Um,
Oh yeah, let's push Jackson up to B because he also prevented the Civil War by curb stomping
I think,
South
yeah, something
Carolina
I don't
before it
get
happened.
is I find a lot of like Confederate, like neo Confederates, like Jackson for some reason. I guess because he was like
Even
a
though he prevented the Civil War
yeah,
from
even though he
happening
was like
in his
a
presidency.
they're like, oh, he was like a white nationalist southerner, but he like basically like if he had been president during the Civil War, he would have gone so much further than Lincoln. Like
Hmm.
so yeah, I'll put him in B because he did prevent the Civil War. Okay, sorry,
I
where
feel like Van Buren should be low because his whole presidency is defined by economic downturn and he
uh
doesn't have any positives.
yeah, I don't think he's like I know who's like I'm pretty sure we both agree who's going to be an F. Um
Hmm.
I feel
I
like
feel like that's fine putting him by John Quincy Adams.
I to be
Because in
fair,
my personal chart, John Quincy Adams I think was above him. So
okay, so I'm also doing like the further to the left, the highest there within that tier. Is that Zachary Taylor, I believe?
no, that's Harrison,
Okay,
William
I
Harrison. He was
this
the guy that was president for a month.
we're entering the period of people who like I barely even know who they are.
I
Um,
always try to use him as everybody that he's dead center because he did nothing. So all the bottom half is worse than him, the top half is better than him.
who was after him?
Um, John Tyler.
Okay, sorry.
John
These
Tyler
I don't
bought
even know who half
Texas.
these people are. Where should he
Well,
be?
okay, William Harrison was one of the only Whig presidents. Because I'm pro westward expansion, I usually view John Tyler pretty positively.
So what
He,
did
of
he
course,
do when he was in
he
power?
bought Texas.
Oh, that was when I thought that happened to Polk.
No, it was him and Polk together, but Polk did the Mexican American War. He's the one that set it up. He also established vice presidential succession because technically in the Constitution it doesn't say that a vice president becomes president. He just kind of did it on his own after Harrison died.
Um, okay, so
So I feel like he's got to be above Harrison.
okay, so we'll just put him in B tier.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay, but unremarkable.
This is right. This is where the Congress becomes very powerful.
Yeah, during this up until basically Lincoln, the presidents don't have a lot of power.
And except for now, we get to a god.
Like, are we gonna? Okay, I'm sorry, Washington.
We're at Polk.
Sorry, Washington. Move over. We have Polk. Polk, who did everything he wanted to do in one term, and was just like, I can only screw it up from here, and then left.
Well, he settled the Oregon dispute, so we got the other half of Montana, and he got the Southwest by destroying Mexico, and he equalized the budget all within one term.
Well, he balanced the budget too.
He balanced the budget as well, yeah.
So he basically just achieved everything.
Yes, in 4 years.
I've never heard it. Red Eagle Politics said there's an expression pulling a Polk, where you just achieve everything really fast. And
yeah, I listened to Red Eagle's Politics. I listened to a bunch of tier lists before I did mine and before this video. I listened to Ben Shapiro's tier list for like 2 seconds, and he said like Woodrow Wilson was like the Great Satan, and I just shut it off because it was so stupid.
Yeah, I'd say
But
like the two
Red Eagle was good until he got to like Trump, and he's like Trump is the Messiah.
I disagree with him strongly on Johnson. We'll get to Johnson and Andrew Johnson.
Oh, Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson is a very.
I think Andrew Johnson's a hero.
I would, if I was a history professor, I would not have tenure because of my views on Andrew Johnson. Let's just put it like that.
But I'd say the two most underrated presidents are probably Monroe and Polk. Would you agree with me on that?
I mean, part of the reason is now America's moved into. There's two reasons that Polk is put into top half historically, but not into the greatest of all time. And that's because the annexation of the Southwest opened the door because of the Missouri Compromise to westward expansion of slave states. Mm-hmm. So it's considered that the Mexican-American War was one of the primary reasons that the Civil War broke out.
I kind of feel like it would have happened regardless.
I feel that way as well. Plus, I kind of feel like the acquisition of the Pacific Coast is something that's like unparalleled importance to American. I mean, America primarily, I think, is set up to be a Pacific power.
So I don't really consider the Mexican-American War to be particularly immoral, because it's not like Mexico had any control over 90% of that land anyways.
Well, it's not like the area that they disputed that Mexico had a lot more claims than America did anyway.
So I think it was like 1% of Mexico's population, and they couldn't even, and the Comanche basically kept them
at bay. They couldn't. The Mexican
they couldn't go further north than Texas.
Yeah, but yeah. Part of the thing is now he fought a war against Mexicans, right? And so he's a white supremacist. So he's got to drop to the bottom now.
Zachary Taylor. Oh, sorry.
Chomsky. So Zachary Taylor's interesting because he like serves 1.5 years and then dies, and he tries to establish a lot of stuff to prevent the Civil War. He tries to get into the war. It's the Compromise of 1850. He sets it up, and Fillmore pushes it through. It's interesting that both times that the Whigs get a president to power, it doesn't work through, and the presidents like die in the middle of office, and then
Yeah,
this
it's
other
weird.
president is like not a committed Whig. So Taylor isn't really a committed Whig either. He's just kind of a hero from
Wasn't he a bit
Mexican-American
like
War.
Ike, where they're just like, he's just really popular, so we want him to just run on
Yes,
our ticket?
yeah, but because he's kind of hard to rank because he didn't serve very long, and then he's one of the ones before the Civil War.
I'll just put him in C
So
tier,
I put him
maybe.
like, I don't know. I put him like where your E tier would be.
Oh,
But I mean, I think that
he didn't do
it's your
anything.
list.
Should I
Yeah,
make a
he didn't do
category
anything
for
wrong.
like? I was gonna have a category maybe for like can't say or don't know or too hard to judge.
No, because I feel like people that didn't do anything wrong either.
Okay, I don't. I'm just gonna put him in
That's
D.
my
I'm
view.
gonna put him in D because I don't think he really did anything that bad. Um,
Okay.
Millard Fillmore.
Kind of a continuation, not as helped the South, was not as good as Taylor in trying to temper the North and the South, but had no support. You know, uh, Whigs disowned him, kind of just isolated in office, couldn't do anything to stop the Civil War from happening.
Okay, Derek Henderson says stop wasting everyone's time with crap that doesn't matter. Make an anime tier list. Well, I mean,
I mean,
Trump is.
I haven't seen enough anime.
I mean, Trump is on this list, so it is kind of an anime tier list. Franklin Pierce.
I'm sorry, I can't give Franklin Pierce pity points. In the
E.
moral system, Pierce is usually at the bottom. Franklin Pierce, the next president.
Should he be an
He
F?
had a terrible life where all his kids died. Yeah, he should be in like E or F. A Northerner who thought the Confederacy were the good guys. I mean, it's kind of ironic because you could also do a list and put like Jefferson Davis in it and have like some kind of like Confederate list and then like make Lincoln the Antichrist. And then
Well,
if you did
I
that,
mean, both of them were
Pierce
dough.
becomes
Weren't
S
both of
tier.
them dough faces?
What's a dough face?
A dough face is a northerner who shills for the South.
Yeah, both of them were. I mean, Pierce had a terrible life, and he was an alcoholic, and his son was like beheaded in front of him while he's president in like a railroad accident. It's like really bizarre, and it was a terrible life. But
I guess, in
he didn't
fairness, could
try to
either of them
stop the
have
Civil
done
War.
anything to
I mean, what did Jackson do? What did Lincoln do once he took office? Like they immediately did an occupation.
Oh
or
yeah,
like,
Jackson just said if you like. Well, the thing. Okay, another thing for Jackson's credit is, so South Carolina was going to leave, or was it North Carolina?
South Carolina.
Yeah, I was going to leave over the tariff, and Jackson's like, okay, fair enough, we'll compromise. I'll lower the tariff if you drop the nullification thing. And then they were like, no, we either need complete nullification or we're going to secede. And that's kind of when he got pissed off. So to Jackson's credit, he at least tried to come up with a compromise on that. So, yeah, just neither of them really had a
Lincoln
plan.
occupied the border states as well during the emergency. And I mean, even in the lame duck period, Buchanan could have tried to occupy the states. This is where you get to like the Kansas-Nebraska Act and Bloody Kansas, and they didn't really do anything to stop that.
Although, is it fair? Because, I mean, they aren't as bad as another person on this list who we'll get to.
I don't know. Because with the other person, what they did is a ticking time bomb, while Buchanan, he immediately fed into the Civil War.
Yeah, so neither of them
didn't stop like bleeding Kansas, which is like a mini Civil War.
So just neither of them took any kind of
riots and
corrective
stuff.
action.
Yeah.
Okay, now for
I think Taylor and Fillmore even did more action than them. So.
Okay, now for the one that's gonna get us like 1,000 dislikes.
I'm sorry, S tier. You should be S tier.
It depends. Like once again, it's very much an ideology.
I'm not a Confederate, so like.
Well, you're a Westerner.
I think that I think America being a country and being unified is good. Sorry.
I think
he also. Oh, go ahead.
Just to Lincoln's credit, like I think people have to keep in mind, the terms he had for the Southern reentry were very light.
Oh yeah, he was not a radical. The radical Republicans hated him at the end, right?
Like he just basically wanted it to be over. I think they're just like, look, it's over. The war's done. We're all Americans again. Let's not like keep the drama going. But I mean, he did. If you, I just kind of feel like if you're like an American patriot or whatever, I think you kind of have to have a soft spot for Lincoln.
Well, he think of how many other countries and think of what the radical Republicans wanted to do. Think of how hard, like how much harder rebellions get punished, and like Jefferson Davis went to prison for a few years and died a free man.
Yeah, didn't he get exiled to Canada?
He died a free man. I think he was buried in New Orleans.
Yeah, when I read Vanderbilt's biography, it said he was a big proponent of getting Jefferson Davis out of jail because he thought it was just an open wound.
Yeah. I mean, Lincoln really tried to reconcile the country after the Civil War. I think he did I mean, I guess there's some argument that maybe like he pushed too hard and should have like negotiated the end. And so like in like the end of 64 or 65, but I think that's stupid like post hoc reasoning.
Yeah, so I think
and now like woke people try to undermine him because he thought slavery was bad, but he didn't believe in modern things, in the modern wokeism.
So something I find is kind of lame is when some conservatives or libertarians complain that he violated civil rights.
Well, yeah, but he did so you couldn't violate habeas corpus under the violation in a rebellion.
Okay, but like if there's a time for when
FDR like putting the Japanese in prison camps and putting like people into prison that spoke out against him, that's justified under the Constitution.
Well, I mean,
it's just
I mean, if half the country is seceding and everything's going to shit, if there's a time to suspend, like civil rights and assume emergency
powers. If New
powers,
York went under, they would have lost the war.
Well, also, yeah, also he, what was it called again?
I agree, Constantine. We're gonna get to our most controversial pick, and
Constantine says Booth was such a spurt that he stopped reparation. Repatriation, yeah. So I don't know. A lot of people are going to hate us for that one. I think looking at it from a perspective of what made the United States of America a stable, great country, I think you have to go with Lincoln. If you're like a Southern nationalist and you think the country should have broken up and the Confederacy should have won, then obviously you're going to dislike Lincoln. But if you're looking at it from any kind of like pro-American perspective, I really don't see how you can like think if Lincoln,
the country's unified, like, and the South wasn't punished very bad.
Well, all the punishment the South had was because he got shot. Like, Okay. I'm going to say this. It's fair for Southerners to not like Lincoln, and I can respect that. Yeah, no, I don't have any issue with that. I'm just saying, like, I think people, like, go too far in the other direction. Andrew Johnson, I'm going to put an A tier.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally Johnson
Is,
is
like, the
always at the
worst.
bottom. Yeah. And there's argument, so like you could say that Andrew Johnson, like within the moral framework, is bad because he
Because
was
more
like
racism.
resolutely, yeah, well, just not just that, but resolutely would not compromise with the radical Republicans and was like completely stubborn, right?
The radical
But
Republicans were crazy, though. Like,
yes,
they were, I mean, they were called radical for a reason. Like, weren't they far to the left of, like, mainstream liberals at the time?
yes, well, I mean, originally, also like pretty much all white men were disenfranchised in the South, and
They
like
militarily
blacks were going
occupied.
to rule. Yeah, like the South was under military occupation, and blacks were like the only ones that were going to have civil rights, basically.
And then they maintained
And they
occupation
controlled
of
all
the
like the state
South.
houses and stuff.
They maintained occupation, prevented from Southern whites from voting, so they could keep getting their presidents elected.
Hmm.
Which is kind of it would be based if they weren't like, but like Johnson tried to stop some of the
Well,
crazier
if
shit
the
that he.
radical Republicans weren't broken by what Johnson using his executive power to break them, there would have been a guerrilla war. I mean, there basically was a guerrilla
Did
war of
they
the
seize?
Redeemers and the KKK
Did
and
they wind
everything,
up seizing
but it would have
land?
been way worse. What?
Did they seize land from the upper class in the South?
Um,
Didn't the radical Republicans
I don't
want to
want to get
do?
into that.
Okay.
But the radical Republicans were really truncated by Johnson, and Johnson was following what Lincoln would have done for the most part. He just was a worse politician. But there would have been like a second civil. There would have been a pretty big guerrilla war had he not tempered them.
Okay.
So
So
I mean, he's like considered the absolute worst now, right? Because of
because of
wokeism. But
wokeism,
traditionally, yeah, but traditionally he was considered pretty bad under the moral framework. And then he's considered just kind of like a failure, period, because he didn't do
because they
anything
got
that,
him.
like, he didn't put anything forward, and he got impeached, and he lost the executive branch, like the rights it had under the Constitution, where like the Congress steals rights from the executive branch. So like he can't, like, the executive branch can't like dismiss people and stuff, and then like that's part of the reason that, like, I think until Grover Cleveland, part of the reason that we don't know anything about those Gilded Age presidents is because the power that the Congress stole all this power from the executive branch, and so then because of that we go into this period of like all these presidents we don't remember, where like the Congress you have legislative supremacy again.
Okay,
But
Grant. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Grant, I feel
I have no idea
might
where to put Grant.
see. I mean, Grant again was a more moderate Republican. He did do Reconstruction, but it was a lot less as hard as the radical Republicans initially wanted.
Hmm.
And then he helped westward expansion. The country was rebuilding after the Civil War. But he
No,
traditionally. Oh, go ahead.
it should be noted that although corruption was prevalent in his administration, I don't think there was ever any accusations that he personally partook in it. He was just a
Mm-hmm.
monumentally bad judge of character.
Yeah, so traditionally under the moral framework model, Grant usually ends up at the bottom. But as time has gone on, and with um, that fading away, and wokeism has actually pushed him up higher into the middle now.
Okay.
So
I don't have
I
a
think
ton
he
to say.
fits in the middle. He's one
Yeah,
of those people where it's like his accomplishments before president can taint him into being viewed more positively as the general in the Civil War.
interesting fact, he was recently made the third six-star general by Congress.
Huh, I never heard about that.
You know who the other two
So who are the
six-star?
six?
Take a guess.
Washington and Eisenhower?
Washington and Pershing.
Oh, Pershing's kind of, well, okay.
Well,
Was this just done in retrospect?
No. Pershing actually was made a 6-star general when he was still alive.
Oh, okay.
It's 6 stars is general of the armies instead of general of the army. Sorry, just a random interesting fact. Is this Rutherford B. Hayes?
No, yeah, it is.
Okay, where should he go?
Rutherford B. Hayes.
I have
He didn't
no idea.
really do anything. In wokeism, he's the bottom of the barrel. He's like the great Satan in wokeism because this is the end of Reconstruction. Because the election of 1876, because Grant wasn't able to run for a third term on the Republican ticket because of his corruption scandals, because he was the first that wanted to run for a third term. Rutherford B. Hayes got it, and then Rutherford B. Hayes lost the popular vote to Tilden, the Democrat, and then they had to pull it into Congress because he won the electoral college.
No, you can't say that. You can't say that there was no corrupt bargain.
There
There was no corrupt bargain. There was no but isn't it openly admitted that they made a deal like that Rutherford B. Hayes would be elected on the condition that they ended occupation of the South?
Yeah. So anyway, that means that Rutherford B. Hayes is put into the Great Satan tier.
Where would you put him? Like C or B?
I just put him smack in the middle because he didn't do anything. He didn't really do anything. I just kind of put the Gilded Age presidents in like the middle because they didn't really do anything positive. I think that Grant did more positive than him.
Is that Chester?
This is Garfield, and then Chester Arthur, and then Grover Cleveland. Garfield, of course, got shot like a few months in. He was like a big reformer who wanted to get rid of the corruption in the Gilded Age, and he got shot. So he's like William Harrison, where he didn't get a service term, and then his vice president Chester Arthur comes in. Chester Arthur pushed forward some of his reforms. This is where we try to. The Republicans wanted to shift the system into more meritocracy instead of a spoil system. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the spoil system ultimately is still around, as we know. But Chester Arthur continues that reform, and then Chester Arthur also does the Chinese Exclusion Act, so based.
Okay,
so I like to push him ahead a little bit.
Wasn't Grover Cleveland pretty good?
Grover Cleveland is interesting. Oh, another thing about Rutherford B. Hayes, he was in a massacre of strikers, and so Grover Cleveland was in he ordered one of the greatest massacres of strikers in history. So I don't know how you feel about that. Here's where your libertarian flag or not comes out. But
my understanding was, didn't Grover Cleveland
massacred strikers?
He was a conservative Democrat, right?
Yeah, he was like the most conservative, like traditional conservative in that era of the Gilded Age. It's interesting that the Gilded Age is known as the era of corruption, but every single person wanted to try and reform the government to stop it. Or every single president wanted to reform the government to stop it, but none of them did until you get to like Theodore Roosevelt.
I don't recall a lot about him. I just recall that he was very fiscally responsible. I don't know if that...
He was fiscally responsible. His second term was... marked because he had a split term where Benjamin Harrison comes in between his two terms. He's the only Democrat to serve during the Gilded Age. He was pretty popular. I think Benjamin Harrison won in the Electoral College, but Cleveland won in the popular vote.
Do you think because a lot of like conservative Republicans voted for him?
Oh yeah, he was like the reverse Ronald Reagan, where like. What would be the reverse, like, red dog dem? I don't know. Like, he was popular with Republicans. He was generally popular. He's faded from memory, and his second term was marred by an economic depression, and he massacred strikers.
So something I've tried to I've basically just kind of come to the conclusion of is you can't map modern politics onto 19th century American politics. It just doesn't work.
It breaks down really hard when you try to do this, because I feel like you have to measure the gilded politics, like presidents against each other, and you have to measure modern presidents against each other, because it's like a lot of the modern presidents, like in my list, they just end up in F tier to
What it
me because of
like
being pro mass immigration.
like are the Whigs a liberal or conservative party by today's standards?
I don't know.
I mean,
They're
they're
something
like
else.
they're like
Like-
they're like socially conservative, but like pro government intervention in the economy. So where do they like fit? And then
As
the
you said, they're legislative supremacists as opposed to executive supremacists.
like the Democrats that are this weird combination of like conservatives and is it when do the Democrats become liberal? Is that under FDR or
Not even under FDR, because they're just kind of like populist, but they're like more they're more like white supremacist than the Republicans until like LBJ.
I kind
Like,
of
it's really
consider
LBJ.
the Democrats in the first half of the 20th century to be basically a Christian Democratic Party. I'm not sure if you'd agree or disagree with that, but that's kind
I
of
mean, both parties were Christian, pretty much. I mean, but
no,
like,
but you know what I mean. Like,
I mean, William Jennings Bryan was like, when he ran for president, all of the times, it was like the Democrats were an explicitly Christian party.
oh, but I mean like Christian democracy in terms of like the social welfare policies and stuff like that.
I think that fits, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, back to the list. So, well, how do you feel about Benjamin Harrison? I don't know anything about him.
He was helping build the Navy. So did Chester Arthur. So I guess that's forward thinking. But again, one of those truncated, not powerful Gilded Age presidents that everybody forgets about. I would just put him by like Rutherford B. Hayes down there.
McKinley.
I mean, he's defined by you know, his monetary policies, but ultimately
Were they a
conquest of the
disaster or were they
Philippines,
successful?
Puerto
Like, I can't remember.
They were successful. They were successful. But it's like, it's so far like that being like a major I mean, Ron Paul considers it important, but like, do presidents even like, does anybody talk about that anymore? It's like so far outside of like people's minds now. It's kind of like an alien world. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like he didn't actively hurt the country at the conquest of the Philippines or the conquest of Puerto Rico. I mean, I guess it's like dishonorable, or like America didn't need to do it, but it also didn't actively hurt the country.
Great
So I
White
just put him
Fleet
in the
under
middle of
him
the
or
Gilded
Teddy?
Age. Teddy. He of course, like all the Republicans had a policy of building up the Navy and expanding into the Pacific. At
So
that time.
I tend to view the Republicans during this period as national liberals, or kind of liberal nationalists.
They were really into establishing meritocracy and expanding the Navy and making America into the premier power of the Pacific.
Okay, I'll put McKinley in B tier maybe.
I mean, he usually gets put into like just where, if you split it down the middle, he's at the top, like the top half of the middle. I put him at like 19 or something like that in mine.
Okay. Teddy.
I think either A or S tier. He kind of ends the Gilded Age, reestablishes the power of the presidency, which had very low power and prestige in an prior era of legislative supremacy. He establishes the modern conservation movement, gets environmentalism going, establishes the park system.
I think a lot of the like consumer
really cements
a lot of the consumer
really
protection stuff.
Yeah, it really cements America as a world power. Obviously, we had defeated Spain under McKinley, but he really establishes America as a world power.
Did he win the Nobel Prize for negotiating?
I don't remember if he did, but he of course negotiates, as you're saying, the Japanese-Russian peace treaty, and flew the Great White Fleet around the world. broke Panama off, established it as a puppet
That's
state
true.
from
Yeah.
Colombia, built the Panama Canal, which was essential in making, because without the Panama Canal, America really struggled becoming the naval power it is. America now is the greatest naval power that has ever existed ever. But without the Panama Canal, that couldn't happen. There would be two separate navies. It would be completely on their own. It would be America would be weaker than Britain or Japan without the Panama
I think
Canal.
he tempered a lot of the excesses of capitalism at the period without like going in a socialist direction.
If you're into like Chicago economics, you should support Theodore Roosevelt.
So back when I was reading the entry about him years ago on Conservapedia, it said Teddy had 10 personalities, 6 of which conservatives like, and 6 of which liberals like.
He's, one of those unifying figures that's viewed positively by anybody generally. Probably one of the most charismatic. I mean, maybe Jackson ultimately is the most charismatic president, but Theodore Roosevelt can compete with him.
Taft.
Continues the economic policies of Roosevelt.
Did he be B or A?
I mean, if you want to put him in B, he continues his policies. Ultimately,
wasn't he just kind of an okay conservative
he's just kind of like
president?
Okay, yeah. What ends up happening is that Theodore Roosevelt feels like he's not a good successor, then runs against him in a third party, splits the Republican vote, and causes Woodrow Wilson to win.
Okay, some people are saying that Taft broke up a bunch of trusts.
He technically broke up more trusts than Roosevelt.
I'm gonna put him like near the top of B tier. He did only serve one term, but he seemed like a pretty good, like, conservative.
I don't think he did anything negative.
No, he was like a decent conservative Republican president who didn't do anything like amazing, but didn't do anything bad. Or actually, you know what? I'll put him in A.
Okay.
Not doing anything bad is, compared to a lot of people, this list. Okay, here's one that's really hard. Where should we put Wilson?
Wilson is like, I don't know. Now all these tier list people, now the popular view is Wilson is like down by Buchanan and Pierce. And
what was Wilson's domestic policy like?
Did he have a domestic? Oh yeah, well he established direct election of senators. He established the.
I actually kind of feel like that's something he should get more shit for.
The income. Well, it's weird because what ends up happening is that he has all these things which are viewed positively by would traditionally were viewed positively by left-wing people, and so Woodrow Wilson. So there's like different periods in the ranking on like academia's view of the presidents. So you initially had like the moral period where like the presidents that had the most corruption, they're at the bottom, and then you had like kind of like the expansion of democracy view. And then the expansion of democracy slowly turned into like a quasi-socialist view, and now you have like a wokist view. So like under the expansion of democracy view and under the socialist view, Woodrow Wilson was like always an S or A tier, like always in top 10, sometimes in top 5. But now because he was pro-segregation and because he watched The Birth of a Nation,
he watched a movie film.
Yeah, he said a movie film was good, so that obviously like makes him worse than all the other people that supported segregation.
So what I dislike about him is he destroyed a lot of the monarchies in Europe.
I think that's kind of.
Oh, that's exaggerated. How much?
I think it's really exaggerated.
Okay, so it's exaggerated.
In World War I is like grievously exaggerated in American historiography.
I do think that the war probably would have ended in some sort of negotiated peace if the U.S. hadn't have come in.
I don't know. I think Britain ended the war by developing combined arms, and that America contributed to that with more troops. But I think the
I kind of feel
combined
like both
arms of
sides were.
artillery and tanks working together is what won the war, and America contributed, but America didn't shift the balance to defeat Germany. I think
I
the real shift of balance was tanks and artillery
I
working
kind
together and with
of I
airplane
somewhat agree,
spotting.
somewhat disagree. I kind of feel like if America hadn't have entered, it probably would have gone on at least a while longer. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I mean, I think the Entente would have won, but it might have been in like 1919.
yeah, because it was all the fresh troops just coming in. Like both sides were
You got to
completely
remember
fine.
though about this whole thing is that Woodrow Wilson was more lenient to Germany than Britain and France were.
So where should we put? I think actually direct election of senators is one of the worst
I think
things.
that's like terrible. Um,
I honestly think that's the
if you're a
worst thing.
libertarian, the whole income tax thing is obviously terrible. Trillion considers him the Antichrist because of that. I don't know. I put him around C or D. I don't. America had no business being in World War One, and he did it for like vanity reasons, and he lied to the American people about it because he ran against Taft. Did he run against? No, he didn't run against
No, wasn't his
um,
campaign platform in his reelection? He
Taft. What
kept
was
us
it?
out of
Yeah.
war.
Who did he? Yeah, in 1916. But who did he run against in 1916?
I don't remember.
He ran against Hughes. Okay, but he was the anti-war candidate, and then ended up in World War One anyway.
Or should I put him in E? Uh,
There's nobody in E. Go ahead and put him in E.
okay, because I don't dislike him for the same reason, like a lot of the,
That woke people do.
no, that a lot of normie conservatives are like, oh, he was a socialist.
I don't know. I put him in the middle. I I find him in very difficult. Maybe it's just because like I'm trying to contradict like the woke
I'm
people
just gonna put
being
him in D
contrarians.
because
Okay.
also also the League of Nations failed because America didn't even join it. So uh, let's see
I don't
here.
even I don't even know if I believe in the United Nations. So,
Um,
but
I don't think. I mean, I'm not American, but I don't agree with complete isolationism. I
I
think
don't I tend to have like kind of a point of view of like America should be the leader of the new world. And if we push further than that, we'll bankrupt ourselves.
I think America should be a world player and should just try to have good relations and try to trade and do things that are
I'm
beneficial.
not I think NATO is like draining. Like we can't run NATO
Uh,
without America going bankrupt. But
yeah, I tend to agree. I the UN is too much. I do think it is useful to have an international arena.
it is good for spying. Um, I mean, does the UN have any power other than being a framework to
I think it
what do you call it?
pretends it
Concern
does.
troll.
I
It's
think
like concern trolling, basically.
I do think there is merit in having like an international organization where people can meet and talk on a regular basis. But yeah, anyways, moving on. What's
Harding
his name
is
again?
in the moral system is usually put at the bottom. Of course, I think
He didn't do
both.
anything bad though, did he?
Uh, he's the most defined by a corruption scandal and is widely viewed to have committed suicide to escape the consequences.
So
The Teapot
see,
Dome scandal.
so
I don't know. You could put him down. I would put him down by Van Buren and John Quincy Adams.
okay, Silent Cal. I'm gonna say A.
Are you gonna put him in C tier because Harding was made Cal as vice president?
Unironically, I'm gonna put Cal in A
I think
tier
Cal should be an A tier.
because I think
He
he did.
passed the Immigration Restriction Act and provided over a pretty substantial era of peace and prosperity.
He also did nothing during a time period where it was appropriate to do nothing. Um, like, and this is one of the reasons why I like, because I remember when I was reading, I think it was maybe the Politically Incorrect Guide to the Presidents. They gave Eisenhower credit for not harassing the American people on a daily basis, like for not making that many like addresses, as opposed to like Obama or Justo or a lot of the leaders where they just lecture like the public every day. Cal not harassing the American people. Um,
I do think that John Paul II lost power for the papacy by like touring the world and stuff. I think that if a president or a leader, I think being quiet and only speaking when you ought to gives a lot of power and prestige.
Also a states' rights guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think they tried to pass some like workers' rights legislation federally, and he supported it personally, but he said it was outside of the jurisdiction of the U.S. government. I've never really heard anything bad about Cal. Um, how much of the Great Depression was his fault?
I think that's kind of a meme.
No, I'm just wondering because it did happen like after his time in office.
I
So
don't think it's as much fault as it is Jackson's with Van Buren.
okay, I think Cal is like if you want like kind of a libertarian conservative president, I think he's a good ideal. I'll give DeSantis credit for picking
Picking
him
him.
like for something interesting, like not just saying Reagan or Washington or Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Hoover.
I always put him next to Van Buren as a president defined by an economic downturn and only having one turn because of it.
How much of it like the because the modern conservative narrative is that his liberal economic policies caused the Great Depression to get worse.
He was a lot more reserved, but I think FDR made the when proved through his interventionism. I'm sorry. So in my video about this, where I talked about my own tier list, my point of view is that I'm not against social welfare problems or problems. I guess it's a Freudian slip. I'm not against social welfare programs. It's just that I want them to be economically feasible in the long term. I don't think that they're immoral. I just think that you have to have ones that are economically feasible in the long term. So I'm not against intervention in the economy per se. I'm I mean I was NASBOL for a while, the NASBOL guy.
Okay, some people are
So
saying C because they built some. He built a lot of infrastructure.
well he so I think that the Republicans are right when they talk about there's a continuation of the interventionists in building infrastructure policies of FDR under Hoover, but I feel like Hoover's entire term is defined by an economic recession, so I just feel like he has to go in the bottom half.
Okay, here's
But
another
that's
hard
me
one.
personally.
Where are you gonna put FDR?
Either S or A tier.
Really
Like I
interesting.
just said, okay, so from the perspective of being against immigration, he deported a shit ton of illegal immigrants and was anti-Mexican immigration. He, like I said before, a lot of his economic policies timed out. A lot of the New Deal programs timed out, so I think that that's fine. Because my point of view is that I'm not against like social welfare or anything like that. I'm just against um, like
It's
you need to have like the bottom line balance out at the end of the day.
well,
Like you
didn't a
can't
lot of his
run into
spending
debt.
actually build stuff?
Yes, I mean he hired people to work for the federal government to build stuff a lot of the time. I mean some of the policies are stupid, right? Like where they just instead of they would like buy to try and promote the agriculture industry, they'd literally buy food from farmers and then destroy it to drive up prices for the farmers on purpose.
It's just if I have to
Um,
pick between just giving like
yeah, so
trillions of
Bob John's
dollars to
like he
just
was
random
around
people.
for the Holodomor. It's like, well, you could, but I guess like the thing is that FDR was too like a lot of people in his administration were sympathetic to the Soviet Union, and so the like in one of his vice presidents, I think it's Gardner, was really sympathetic, and so there's this huge infiltration of communist
I'm
spies
gonna
into the
put him in.
government.
I'm gonna put him in C tier because I don't think he's the Antichrist. Like, but
Are you gonna disagree with me really hard and be
no, is
you don't
C
like
tier?
FDR, or I
No,
feel like he should
no, I'm
be
just
A
saying
tier.
he's a mixed bag. I think.
I think I don't think he did that much wrong. I think that the worst he did is the infiltration of Soviet
Yeah, but
spies.
people are saying a lot of the modern administrative state was set up by FDR.
I don't necessarily oppose the administrative state. I just oppose mass immigration and affirmative action.
Did he
So I
bring
guess
in
this is
any
a
like
different point
civil
of view.
rights legislation?
He didn't really. He um in like government contracts, he wasn't a white supremacist. That's it. He was not. So Eleanor Roosevelt, um, who they were technically married but didn't. I don't even think they lived in the same house because he lived with his mistress and she was at his deathbed, and they
Mm-hmm.
were living together. They that was his real wife. That was much more supportive, and that Eleanor Roosevelt was a political marriage. She was substantially more left wing, and that's where um, a lot of the communist infiltration comes from. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I tend to have a more positive opinion of
Oh,
him
but
than
like I
most
think of
conservatives
FDR
do.
as like when I say the Democrats were like a Christian Democratic Party, I kind of think of him and Truman. Um,
Hmm.
I'm gonna compromise and put him in B because I'd probably put him in C and you
Okay,
put
I
him in
think that
A.
I'll settle for that with you. I think
Uh,
I put him in number 6 in mine.
uh,
So I do you think so? Do you think that America shouldn't have been in World War II, or what's your opinion on that? And
I
do you like
actually, I don't, I kind of like, I have very mixed feelings about World War II.
I don't know. I think the whole idea that like FDR didn't stop the like knew that the Japanese were going to do it is like super exaggerated, and it's just kind of like a meme. Like
Um,
the Japanese were going to do it whether or not he knew or not, and there was a lot of information just floating around, and he couldn't have like he didn't I'm not into the whole he let Pearl Harbor be destroyed so he could fight the Nazis and stuff. So, I
once it,
mean, I think Teddy is better than FDR, but I don't agree with the Ben Shapiro and libertarians with FDR. I think
um,
everybody's shouting me down hard, aren't
no,
they?
Victorian Reactionary says FDR is also the reason America's on top of the world instead of someone else. I'm just gonna say I think B is fair because he did a lot of good things. He did a lot of bad things too.
I
Uh,
think we can compromise on B. I'll leave it at that.
okay, Truman.
I You could argue that Truman is better than FDR. I feel like
I'm gonna
I
put
don't
Truman in
know.
B tier. I think. Um,
I don't know. I feel like Truman. So Truman cut back on the communist infiltration, obviously, and so that's better than FDR. But he also like, how do you feel about the Korean War? I feel like of all the post World War II wars outside of Afghanistan, because America basically created South Korea, it makes sense for us to get involved. But I
um,
just generally feel like wars where we're not like we weren't really defending the country,
I
or
just don't
like I
like.
don't think South Korea is that important to America.
I mean, they had good economic relations. They're an ally.
I mean, ultimately after the war, but at the time the Korean War was like wildly unpopular, and it's interesting because in like Harry Truman is shot into the top 10, and like Harry Truman was like despised during his presidency at the end.
So I like Truman for being a like an actual blue collar Democrat, like actually coming from a poor background, like instead of Biden
Hmm.
who like pretends that he's from a blue collar background. Um, I appreciate that he was really anti-communist. And I think he wanted to like build a worldwide like Christian religious crusade against communism or whatever. I just kind of feel Truman is like the last Democratic president who actually was kind of for the little guy. Um,
I kind of JFK's like we'll get to him in a minute, but I I mean he starts the end of segregation. Whether I don't
Truman?
know if that's too spicy for YouTube, yeah, because he integrated the military in Korea. He started integration of the military, which is like sets up the course for the end of segregation.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, that was bad. I think overall, like, so Truman did. I think someone described it as Truman was a canny political operator who guided the U.S. through the opening phases of the Cold War.
Hmm.
Without any disaster, was he did the Marshall Plan, right?
Yes, I mean he also did. He established the modern college system. Whether or not you think that's
Because
good or
I think
bad
the
or
Marshall
not,
Plan is
um,
like a massive success. He also didn't
I
punish
think he
Japan.
established the post-war prosperity. I mean, I think you could make an argument he's better than FDR.
Also, he didn't punish Japan.
Yes,
Uh,
Germany got punished, but
I'm gonna put
Japan
him.
didn't as much.
I'm gonna put him at the top of B tier. I think is fair.
Are we
Uh,
gonna mix up the tiers at the end, fix
uh,
them a little bit,
yeah,
or
will fix him a bit. I think. Well, so I think the Marshall Plan and his decision to rebuild Japan ultimately really paid off because Japan's a
Mhm.
reliable friend of America's to this day.
I think ultimately, I think I said this before. I think America's too. I mean, ultimately, America's most important ally is like the UK. Like they're the greatest
Yeah.
ally, and then Canada. But Canada doesn't like America more because of. I mean, there's kind of like obvious like Canadians try to view themselves as being better than Americans, so not as strong as with the UK. But I think strategically, Turkey and Japan are very, very important
Also
American allies. Now,
economically, also economic. There's
yes,
a lot of trade with Japan. I mean, they have.
I don't think is there a similar thing in history where two countries have been as close after having one of the most brutal wars against each other?
I'm not sure. I will say this, and I've been saying this a lot lately. I feel like after the Soviet Union collapsed, America should have reached out like the hand to Russia and tried to help
Hmm.
them through the 90s. And I think that would have made so much great will. They would
I
have been
think
like,
that we should have built an anti-Chinese alliance with Russia.
well, I think they would have been like our friends forever. Like,
Hmm.
there was so much opportunity for goodwill that was wasted. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna say A, although I think you don't like him as much as I do.
You're gonna put Eisenhower in A.
Yeah.
I think Eisenhower is now number six in certain systems. Eisenhower went from like the slide up in the middle. I don't know. So like you could say Eisenhower used the military to forcibly integrate schools, but he also felt bad for
So
doing it.
I looked it up just in preparation for this. So he disagreed with the ruling, but he felt as president it was his job to enforce the law of the land. Was my understanding of what happened.
Eisenhower was also anti-immigration.
Um,
He did Operation Wetback. I think that his foreign policy was actually better than Truman's.
was that didn't he sit down? Well, he sat down and talked to Khrushchev, right? Or am I thinking of someone
Mhm.
else? Like, didn't he
I
try to
think that
de-escalate the Cold War?
yeah, he tried to because Truman was like he led to the Korean War and Eisenhower ran on ending the Korean War with the stalemate and then just kind of not being overly aggressive. Like JFK was really aggressive by comparison to Eisenhower, but Eisenhower wasn't very aggressive. Tried to establish more peace. Eisenhower, of course, ruled over one of the highest periods of prosperity in human history.
Interstate highway
Um,
system.
he built the interstate highway system. He did Operation Wetback and deported numerous
I
illegal
just think he's
immigrants.
like a solid. Yeah, I think he's just a solid,
Yeah.
like, good
I
person.
I put Eisenhower and Coolidge together. They're very similar in my head.
Yep. Okay. JFK.
I feel like I want to put him in like C or in somewhere towards the middle. Um, JFK was like president for 3 years. He's also like Madison, where he causes a problem that's really bad and then he fixes it, where he does the abortive
Did he
invasion
start
of the Bay
Vietnam?
of Pigs. No, that was Johnson. And it's kind of like this meme to push. He sent economic support and advisors to Vietnam, but that wouldn't have led to an outright war until Johnson in 64.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like Madison, where he caused the Cuban Missile Crisis, but he also fixed it pretty well.
Civil rights era have been as bad if he hadn't have died.
It depends because part of the reason I put our next guy so far to the bottom is like he made civil rights to do it's intimately connected with the modern welfare state. And as soon as his civil rights, it says like, should we just move on to?
I'm
'Cause
gonna
I feel
put.
like,
I think I'm gonna put
ironically,
JFK
in view of history, JFK is actually in the shadow of Johnson.
I'm gonna put JFK in the D tier because I don't know, like, although
I
as
think his
like
entire presidency is really just defined from the romance of him dying young and then the Cuban Missile Crisis.
he started. Did he start NASA?
No, that was Eisenhower.
Oh, right, because the Eisenhower dollar has the moon on it. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put him there. So we are. I think we're in agreement where Johnson goes. First
Yeah.
president in U.S. history. Um, was there anything
I
good?
put him. That's how I did it. I made Buchanan technically worse, but he's the second worst.
So the only so okay, maybe this is going to be controversial. I actually kind of support the U.S. in Vietnam. I mean, I think they fucked it up horribly, but I'm not against.
Okay, like here's the thing: if Vietnam was the right thing to do, then he fucked it up so bad that like he made it the wrong thing to do. Even if you supported the war, him and McNamara's like, if you have you read that many books about Vietnam?
Any.
Okay, you should read a general history of the Vietnam War and some of the stuff that him and McNamara did. They literally would just like give up land to the Viet Cong and then just bomb it just continuously nonstop. And like they defined like victory by the amount of bombs that they dropped in the Viet Cong knew this, or the North Vietnamese army would know this, that like they would just give up land to the Viet Cong and or in North Vietnam because they're the same thing. They're the same thing.
I kind of feel like post
the
DM the war was probably unwinnable. I'm just sympathetic to anyone struggling against communism.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to South Vietnam. I mean, a lot of martyrs in South Vietnam.
They also got screwed over at the very end of the war.
Yeah,
it's kind of ironic that Biden.
That's where you kind of like get screwed, where you put Nixon. But
it's funny that the same thing's happening to Biden now with Ukraine. That happened to Nixon with Vietnam.
Ironically, we can't rank Biden yet. I kind of think we'll get to that when we talk about him. But
I mean, everything Johnson did was a disaster. He destroyed the black family. Was affirmative action under him?
No, that's under our next guy.
Oh, right. Okay. Immigration reform. The Great Society was a disaster.
Well, so you have to think about the Great Society and civil rights are the same package here. Like, so the way that he did civil rights, and of course, like, a lot of lost control over businesses there, as Barry Goldwater would have said. But the way that he set up civil rights was intricately connected to the Great Society and resulted in
The destruction of the black family.
Yes, and am I allowed to say the numbers on YouTube?
Sure.
13 to 60.
Yeah. Well, the black family was really strong prior to the 1960s, wasn't it?
Well, well, they had a lower illegitimacy rate than I think Asians do today. So,
No, I mean it did that. Also, like FDR at least got something when he spent. Like you can say FDR spent too much money, but at least he built stuff. Did the Great Society even build anything?
I mean, it led to the bankruptcy of America.
Didn't
He
they just
presided over the beginning of the horrible crime rate that which would continue until
Yeah,
Bill
didn't he
Clinton.
just basically
Got it.
throw money at black people? Like wasn't that half of
Yes,
his?
yes, that's what I said. That it's. I mean, he would say that behind closed doors. That like that's what it was. But
Also, he was personally like I would say the most corrupt president is probably either him or
I think the
Biden.
greatest scandal in American history occurred under him, and it's called the USS Liberty.
No, just in terms of being personally corrupt, though, my understanding is Johnson and is like probably the most corrupt president, other than maybe Biden. No, he's probably more
Or
corrupt.
Harding.
Uh, yeah, like Johnson
I
came from a
I
poor
don't.
back.
I think the US USS Liberty happened under him.
Okay,
He's the most subservient to foreign interests. He killed those American servicemen in alliance with a foreign nation that attacked our own troops and then buried it. That's the
yeah,
greatest scandal in American history.
okay. I think you have a strong opinion on this, dude. Where does Nixon go?
Fuck Nixon.
where, where? What does fuck Nixon mean?
That means F. That means F. Fuck Nixon. Nixon established affirmative action. Nixon, he threw Taiwan under the bus and established a trade policy which would destroy greatly hamper the American economy.
In retrospect,
with his
reaching out to
China
China
policy.
was not a good idea.
It was one of the worst ideas in history. Like it was horrible, abysmal.
You had nuclear arms limitation treaty.
I mean, I guess he did SALT 1, but like
Okay,
whatever.
well, I'll give him credit for that.
I mean, that lasted like 5 years.
There's also the
Reagan scrapped it, right? So it already got scrapped like within a few years.
there was also
He did the EPA, right? So that's good. And he kind of sort of maybe would have won the Vietnam War.
what was the other thing he did? I forget. There's so much so the modern narrative I've seen from libertarians is that Nixon was shut down by the deep state because he was going to try to reverse the road to serfdom and he was going to massively cut government spending in his second term and defang the bureaucracy. I don't know if you've heard any of that, but that's like the
Here's the thing, Nixon's tapes are based, but that makes Nixon even worse because he knew the evil he did.
Same thing with LBJ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're gonna probably get lynched for that one. Ford.
Ford is kind of memey because it's like I want to put him. Do I put him up by Harrison and Garfield as people that didn't do anything wrong because he was president for so short a time?
I think he did.
Do I put him at the bottom because he didn't reverse immigration?
I'm gonna put him in.
He didn't reverse LBJ's wrong decisions.
He did prevent the Nixon crisis from getting worse. I do think pardoning Nixon probably did help the country.
I think that was the right idea.
I think he was just like meh tier. I don't think he did anything.
I mean, I think it's heroic to to not get reelected for pardoning Nixon.
I think if Nixon had have gone, like, I think that could have been a constitutional crisis, or it could have gone really, really bad. Jimmy Carter.
I mean, it is going really bad right now, right?
Yeah. Where does Carter the peanut go?
Well, so every single victory in foreign policy that is accredited to Reagan was a policy that was established by Carter.
Interesting.
Um,
There's a lot of
so
disasters
all
under
the,
Carter, though.
I mean, stagflation.
Uh,
Um,
Depending on how
I
you
think
view the
Jimmy
Iranian
Carter is.
Revolution.
I mean, there's that, but Jimmy Carter also caused peace between Egypt and Israel, which was at that point with Yom Kippur and the 6 Day War, the most explosive thing that could have led to World War
Now,
III.
I'm gonna meme people meme about it. Realistically, I don't know how long America could have held on to Panama. In
I
the
feel
face
like
of
you could slap him in
decolonization.
E tier. Nobody's been in E tier yet.
Yeah. Okay, Reagan.
I can't believe that you just kind of went fully on board with me with Nixon being an F tier base.
It's kind of just. It's also just funny. It'll piss people off.
I do. I mean, I give Carter. I respect him for A, reestablishing breweries, and B, going in front of the nation being like, oil's going to run out someday, dumbasses. Of course, that didn't help his reelection campaign, but.
I'm gonna say B for Reagan. What do you think?
E, maybe F.
Oh, you're gonna go for E or F? Oh, because of amnesty.
Because of amnesty.
Okay,
And everything that he did in foreign policy, he was following what Carter did. Carter supported the Mujahideen for the whole bankrupting of the Soviet Union, and Carter started building up the military after Brezhnev modernized the Soviet military.
Didn't Reagan not do anything like productive? Like, because people try say he's like some big conservative. What did he actually do?
What did he do? Well, he cut taxes by raising the federal, but he cut taxes at the same time that he raised.
Okay, Victorian Revolutionary brings up a very good point. He shut down the asylum system, so I might have to put him in F tier.
He shut down the asylum system, and as governor and then as president, he supported no-fault divorce.
So, yeah, okay, I think the asylum system is underrated in terms of how much of a disaster that was. I feel like most of the modern homeless problem, or a lot of it, comes from that.
I want to do a deep dive and just see if I can read any books and see like if those videos of like the retarded people being put in a single room and pooping on each other and rubbing it on each other's faces, if that's like a hoax.
Okay, I mean, like, even if it's, you can just reform it. Like, you can.
Yeah, instead of just like.
Like, it's not like it even either or. Like, you can.
Well, I mean, now you have like Chris Chans running around, right?
Yeah, like there's
and just part of it.
And just homeless people who are schizophrenic.
Well, there's just like there's just a lot of like people that if
they're not getting proper treatment.
Well, just there's a lot of crime that goes on with it. With these people, they are mentally ill enough that they can do all these crimes and get away with it too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, George H.W. Bush.
I feel like he's Reagan, but slightly worse.
Why is he worse than Reagan?
Because I don't like him. I don't. Maybe he's not as bad as Reagan because he didn't do amnesty, but he tried to establish America as a global policeman, and yeah, and he did not. I mean, I guess we read his lips and he lied and he rose taxes, but like. How with the whole neocon and Reaganite thing of like decrease taxes, push up federal spending, have a global military to like police the world. Yeah, that's gonna go well in the long term.
I don't think. Okay, so the thing with NAFTA is, would NAFTA have been bad if it was just Canada and America?
No, it would be fine.
Because I think free trade between America and Canada makes sense. I think the issue is Mexico.
I mean, the issue is Mexico.
Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with a Canadian-American free trade agreement.
I don't know. I mean, are you anti-Gulf War and invasion of Panama?
Yes, but I do think the Gulf War did a lot for America's prestige.
Do you think it should be put in E? He should be E tier then, or stay in F tier?
I don't know. I don't like that he snakes it
I
in.
kind of like how I just bullied you again to like put Reagan in F tier.
No, you make very good points. I okay,
I feel like if you want to, you could put him in E tier.
put him in E. I think. I mean, he wasn't as bad. I do think, from like an IR perspective, like the Gulf War got a lot of political capital for America. Like with you get what I mean, right? Like I think it helped America's
Mm-hmm.
prestige a lot. I'm not saying I necessarily support it, but I think it was a big foreign policy success. Okay, the
I guess
next.
the failure of getting the Panama Canal is kind of curtailed when you like literally invade Panama and establish your own
Okay, the
person there.
next guy I think is going to be controversial. I'm going to put Clinton in B tier.
Uh, I mean, I think he should be above Carter and
Or should
Bush.
he be an A tier?
Well, he didn't reverse immigration. He kept that going,
No,
but
I'm going to say
he
B,
ended the
but
crime.
he did all, like, I think well, he ended the crime. We had deficit, like the debt actually went down. I actually don't think "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" was a bad policy. To
I
be
think
honest,
it's fine. I don't really care about it. He kept trying to make America the policeman, but it was a lot less half-hearted, or it was a lot more half-hearted with Bosnia
my
and
biggest issue is that.
Kosovo and Somalia. But I mean, he didn't have two major wars like Bosnia. Whether or not like we picked the wrong horse in Bosnia for America, it was not as bad as like a major war. Like he didn't invade, put troops on the ground, and nobody's suffering from you
The
know
'90s were also just a very
Bosnia war
was
syndrome.
also a time of great prosperity, and
I think you should at least put him. He needs to be. He didn't do. He was pro-immigration, right? So I feel like he needs to be at least in not in B.
okay, I'll
Like
put him at the top of C.
you can't be above Grant and Adams.
I don't know. I feel like before Trump,
I
he was the
can.
best post Cold War president.
I feel he is the best cold or post LBJ president, but I feel like that why like I have deep seated hatred towards mass immigration. So anybody who does so in my tier list, anybody who didn't try to stop mass immigration is just at the bottom,
Okay.
like as principal.
Um.
But I
I
feel like putting him around Ford fits though.
I think you can. There's at least there's like good things you can say about Clinton. Um.
Like I said, I think he's the best post LBJ president, arguably.
Okay. I'm gonna say F for George W. What are you gonna?
I'm not gonna push back against that. I'm
Was
gonna
there
say he
any
needs to
part
be an
of
F
his
tier.
term in office that wasn't a disaster?
He said that he would make one man, one woman a constitutional on the Bill of Rights, but that never happened. At least he said that out loud,
No,
I
but like
guess.
he had control of the Supreme Court. He had control of.
Okay, okay, so like, okay, so
Didn't he have a
here's this thing that
majority
happened.
for all 6 years of
Yeah, for the first 6 years. So anyway, so he starts his term, and then two planes slam into the World Trade Center,
mhm.
piloted by Saudi Arabian immigrants with terrorist ties,
Uh-huh.
and overstays on visas. He is a Republican. The Republicans are more anti-immigration than the Democrats. He's a president, so he has control of the presidency. He has 90% approval rating. He has control of the House of Representatives. He has control of the Senate, and 5-4 in the Supreme Court. What would you do about these a country that has no connection with America.
Invade Iraq.
Invade Iraq, right? We're not going to curtail immigration from
We're just
the
going
Arab
to invade
world.
a random unrelated
We're not
country.
we're not going to stop immigration after you have all these like people running around on visas and everything that are overextended. Like, we're not even going to look into that, and we're not going to look into the influence of Saudi Arabia into our government or Israeli influence. Those two countries have a lot of oversized influence. Look at this
Also,
Desert
the budget
Storm,
was
this
a
USS Liberty incident.
Also, the budget was a disaster under Bush.
Well, I mean, as we said, Bill Clinton, fiscal conservative, Ronald Reagan, Bush 1, Bush 2, let's cut taxes.
Also the Patriot Act. Budget. Okay, you know what? I think he's down there with Johnson. Also, Patriot Act. Like,
I think Reagan needs to be ahead of him, at least.
I actually was there like, I'm just trying to think. I guess there was like the partial birth abortion ban, or did that get overturned?
I don't know. I didn't even think about that.
I'm trying to think of something good that Bush did when he was in office. I can't think of anything. He had the closest to absolute power.
He invaded Afghanistan.
I guess
that wasn't the bad thing to do.
I kind of feel like they had to do something. I'm not saying it was a good idea.
I'm not saying that it was. I'm not saying that I know that Gore would have done it. Even Nader would have done it.
I think they should have
gone McCain in. Obviously would have done it.
Whack the Taliban, declared victory, and come home, and not tried to do a nation building.
They shouldn't have tried to impose democracy on Afghanistan. That's for sure. They should have tried to make some kind of strong man, whacked Al Qaeda, and left.
I think they should have said it.
Had 20 years of never-ending war.
Special forces and air support to the Northern Alliance. I'll let them take over the country, declare victory, and go home. I kind of feel it's I understand that they had to do something militarily, given what 9/11 was, but it didn't have to turn into the shit show it was. I actually think Iraq is one of the biggest fuck-ups in human history. Every aspect of it.
So like I said, I'm very anti-mass immigration. You had a bunch of immigrants from a really foreign country that has no connection to America, because it's different than I understand the whole idea that if you're pro foreign immigration to America, Mexico, right? It's a Christian country that's on America's border. I don't want Mexican immigration, but it's not Arab immigration. Muslim Arabs do not have any connection to America's history, and they are very far away from our country. So you have a bunch of Arabs.
Also, the Saudis are backstabbing
3,000 American Arab immigrants. And so what does he do? He does not blame Saudi Arabia for funding Al Qaeda, for all this missing money that's coming into Saudi Arabia funding Al Qaeda. And he, instead of clamping down at least on Arab immigration, if not on all immigration, where he has 90% approval rating in both House of Representatives and the Senate,
or less absolute,
decides to make Freudian slip. He decides to make Saddam Hussein pay for it.
Also, Saudi Arabia are backstabbing cocksuckers, and they've made the world
Saudi Arabia. I think
a
that
worse
there's
place.
There's this idea that the Israeli lobby has.
I think the Saudis are as bad as Israel. The Saudis have radicalized. Yes. There's a lot of places in the world where the Muslim populations were fairly laid back. Saudis just sent Wahhabi clerics there and riled them.
Saudis fund all the mosques built in Western Europe.
Yeah, no. I think in Indonesia or Central Asia or some other places, they were fairly laid back, the Muslims there, but the Saudis sent Wahhabis there to try to rile them up, and a lot of
somebody's saying Serp, well, what about all the Christian Arabs? Well, the invasion of Iraq was the most catastrophic thing to ever happen to like within the last few centuries in the Middle East, or since the Ottoman genocides at the collapse
How
of
about
World
just
War
like
One
how much
for
of
Christians and every minority. Mandeans have been purged and Yazidis have been purged from Iraq because of the Iraq War. Both
I
those groups and Syriac Christians. Those three minorities have been purged. And now Iraq is a puppet state of Iran.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the Saudis are like as bad as the Israelis.
Definitely.
I know
But
that's a controversial statement.
he is in both Bushes with Desert Storm as well are in the pocket of the Saudis.
And the Israelis at the same time. I just to people in the chat, when I say Putin does a good job with his relationship with Saudi Arabia, I don't mean that the Saudis are good. I'm just saying that Putin's like actually good at doing diplomacy and getting people to like Russia, whereas Biden is completely incapable of doing it. Okay, Obama, the man who we have to thank for. I'll say one thing: he didn't start a nuclear war, which McCain probably would have.
I mean, he stoked race riots.
He's gonna have to go into F tier too. Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Victorian reactionary
basically
points.
everything that happened under Bush, but stoking race riots.
Also, he caused the refugee. Someone points out he caused the refugee crisis.
Well, yeah, he had all the terrible policies of Bush. I feel like Reagan needs to be above both Bush and Obama.
But no, but like Bush didn't cause the refugee crisis. Overthrowing Gaddafi led to like the destruction of Europe. Like, also just Obamacare, like, oh yeah, gun control, Euromaidan, the Arab Spring, NSA expansion, gay marriage. He gave us Sotomayor and Kagan, was it?
Kagan.
He gave us the wise Latino woman. He set back race relations in America like 30 years. Hadn't race relations actually calmed down quite a bit before Obama?
Well, there wasn't any racial riots between Nixon and there was the race riot in LA, but it wasn't a big deal until Obama, with Eric Holder going to funerals and crying publicly.
If I had a son, he would be Trayvon.
Yeah.
Like, Obama, like, led to... Okay, people are saying...
everything that, like, the wokeists say about Woodrow Wilson saw Birth of a Nation. Obama said that Trayvon would be his son. So...
He just injected himself in all kinds of just random racial things to stir the pot. Yeah, Obama was bad. Okay, now for one of the hard ones, the Dawn. I
don't think that it was too positive. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say B tier.
Well,
he halved immigration.
So the thing is that where in my system I put Donald Trump at the top of all the LBJ presidents, he's still at the bottom because his president, everything he tried, maybe with the exception of protectionism.
Okay, we got Roe v. Wade overturned, and he reduced immigration by 50%.
He is now against Roe v. Wade, and the most terrible raiding of the border is going on right now in American history.
Okay, that's not really
no long-lasting consequences, but I'm not saying that it's not really his fault, but he didn't try to. He knew that there would be cheating in video game journalism. He was fully aware of that and didn't prepare until after the fact, too.
I kind of feel that Roe v. Wade reducing immigration and not getting America into any wars.
I think that the protectionism thing might stick, though.
Also, okay, so everything he did got overturned. Also, to be fair to Trump, we had COVID. He had to deal with COVID. Like, he had a really Like COVID is like worse than pretty much anything, I think, other than maybe Lincoln had to deal with.
Really? I don't know if COVID's that.
Well, the
I mean,
economy
I'll
completely
put
collapsed.
COVID. I don't know. I would put COVID somewhere around, but like, I don't know. I think COVID might be equal to like Vietnam.
Um,
I don't think it's equal to this. It's nowhere near equal to the Civil War, even World War II.
um, well, the entire economy. Maybe I just biased because I'm Canadian, and they locked down literally everything for like 2 years.
I don't know. I think you need to like debate. We need to have a debate over who's better, Clinton or Trump. But
Um,
do you want to compromise and put him in C?
I'll put him at the bottom of B. He
Okay.
got
I mean,
okay.
this is your screen,
Regardless
so
of what he said and did, he did get Roe v. Wade done, and I don't think he
yeah.
can
But
take it
now
back.
he's against it.
No, but doesn't
I
isn't
don't
he?
know. I guess that's positive. Yeah.
Isn't his position states' rights or?
I don't know. I think his position is shut up pro-lifers. You're ruining us now.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna put him in B. Yeah, he did appoint a lot.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, here's a problem of recency bias.
We can agree
So
that
a lot of people
he was
say
way
that like
better
we
than.
shouldn't put Obama, or he was better than Obama. He was better than Reagan. He's better than George W. Bush. He's better than Herbert Walker Bush.
Well, we can't really rate Biden because Biden wasn't. No, no, sorry, YouTube. That was a joke. That was a joke. Biden's election was 100% legitimate. He's the legal president. Um,
Didn't you put the thing at the bottom of Joe fucking Biden because you can't rate him?
that was the one that that just was on the list that when it loaded, it just had Joe Biden.
I think in history, Rourke. I think Rourke's right that he will be He will be defined by economic downturn, like Jimmy Carter and like Harding and like Martin Van Buren. He also lost the Vietnam War in a much more direct way than Ford did.
Who, Nixon or
no? Biden. I think we're forgetting just how, because so much stuff is going on right now.
No,
we're
like
he said that Afghanistan had a good chance for winning, and that even if they were losing the war,
is Milley the worst?
Is
Milley like the worst general in American history?
In my video, I just kind of ranted about how that's something we forgot about Obama. He put women into combat roles and completely rearranged all the heads of the leadership in the military and put Milley there and stuff like that.
Like Biden, every single thing like Biden's. Also, Reagan Republican likes Biden, so that's like reason enough to think he sucks. But like Biden fucked up Afghanistan. The Ukraine thing is a fucking disaster. Everybody hates the U.S. now. I mean, can you think of a time in your life? Like, I feel like more people like the U.S. under Bush than like the U.S. under Biden.
I don't know.
Like,
we can't rate him. At the same time, I appreciate him for losing the Afghan war and then just being like, I'm done. It's over. I feel like biting the bullet on it. I give him respect.
No, but like I'll give him a little credit.
So far, he hasn't stoked any race riots either.
It was like humiliating how it happened, though.
We'll see this year. I have a feeling that there might be some more people getting their necks kneeled on that it's an election year in 2024. So we'll see how much he stokes that.
Do you believe the polls at all? That Trump's Trump's up by like 4% in the popular.
Yeah, that's what usually happens at this time, though.
No, but Trump, I don't think was ever like above the popular vote with Hillary, or maybe like in one or two polls.
No, generally what happens is even when you have an unpopular incumbent, even when they win, they ultimately win in a difficult election. The person running against them will be a year before will be above them in the polls, and then they'll slide back down and be neck and neck.
I kind of
So that's
don't
what I
think
expect to
Trump's going to
happen.
get arrested. I think if he loses, he'll probably go to jail. But
Keep in mind that like Ross Perot was winning at this time in like 1991 in the polls.
I
So
mean,
I don't think
okay,
it means anything.
if Ukraine surrenders, is that like it for Biden, or will people just forget because it's not the current thing
I
anymore?
don't know if like it matters that much outside of like people that are pro like penny pinching Republicans. I don't
Right.
think that the average person in it, like the average American, doesn't give two shits about Ukraine.
Because
Only
it's not the
like,
current thing. I mean, a
yeah,
lot
it's
of
not the current thing
the
anymore.
Ukraine lobby is really strong in Canada, so it's a big
I
deal
think
here.
I think what's kind of like a big deal is that America's going through stagflation, and I think that people are gonna. I think that the directly losing the Afghan war, I think, is still a big deal. Actually,
Well, it was humiliating. Like Biden's like, you aren't gonna see the. I can't do the Biden voice. You aren't gonna see like helicopters leaving the embassy like
he
in
said you
Vietnam.
won't. It won't be like Saigon, and he was right. Saigon lasted for 2.5 years.
well,
What did it?
well, Saigon was an
It
orderly
lasted a month in
evacuation.
Afghanistan.
Well,
I mean, the
like,
Taliban had the woo woo priest guys like in Age of Empires 1 that just like flip tanks to their side and stuff.
they got no, but like in Viet, like in Saigon, they had an orderly evacuation plan. Like it was sad that South Vietnam collapsed, but it's not like they're
There wasn't
completely
American
unprepared.
soldiers at the airport like
Didn't they
begging for
have to
mercy for the
bribe the Taliban?
Taliban.
Did they have to like bribe the Taliban
Yes.
to let them get out? Now, to my
And then
understanding, the North Vietnamese could have deliberately like delayed a bit taking Saigon just to get let the Americans leave because they didn't want to like stir the pot on that one. Um, and they didn't try to shoot down any of the aircraft or helicopters, which would have been a monumentally stupid thing to do. Um, so I don't
I don't
know.
know. The way that what is the month called? Is it Black April unfolded is pretty like was it really catastrophic and sad. But
What was Black April?
the last month of South Vietnam, there was a catastrophic defeat, and basically the whole entire South Vietnamese army routed simultaneously. And so North Vietnam thought that they would win by like 1978 or something probably, and then they won in like a month.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's Black April.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
it's
it
Black
does it make
April.
me a neocon for sympathizing with South Vietnam.
No, because that's not what neocons would have done. That would have been like anti-communist.
Okay, well I think we came up with a pretty solid list. Thank you
Are
very
we
much.
gonna shift around, or are you
Oh, okay.
anybody in the rankings
Or no. Okay,
themselves?
we can. Who should be the
Do
top
you
of
want to
S tier?
keep? Do you want to keep Polk as is the highest of the S tier?
Yeah, for the memes.
Okay. Do you think it's fine after that, or do you want to move Lincoln ahead?
Uh I don't know. I think that's pretty solid.
Okay.
I think that's
Um,
fine. I might put Andrew Johnston down. I might do that.
move Lincoln above James Monroe.
Yeah,
I think Johnson.
I put Lincoln
I
above
think
Monroe.
Johnson should. If you're gonna put Johnson in A, I think he should at least be at the bottom of A.
No, I put him in the bottom of A. I'm moving
Okay, that's
around.
good.
So I put Coolidge at the top of A, then Ike, then Taft, then Johnson.
Okay, that fits.
Uh,
Um,
B tier. Who should be at the top of B tier?
I think it's fine the way that it is, kind of. I don't know. You put Cleveland pretty high. I would have put him in like C, but I think
Uh,
it's fine the way it is.
I
I
could
wouldn't
put him
move
at the
stuff
top. I
around
could put
really.
him on the top of C. I think it's fine.
Okay.
C tier. I might
Um,
put Clinton like at the top of C.
maybe Grant. I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's I don't. I think it's okay. I think You think Clinton above Grant and John Adams?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And
Um,
then
like,
I feel like JFK should be hired, but in D tier, but
he's the top of D tier.
okay.
Uh,
I think D tier is like identical to the way that I made it in mine.
E.
Do you want to move Reagan actually into E? I feel like I would put Reagan into E, but
Okay, I admit
I
I
don't know.
just
You
kind
could keep
of
him in F. Or do you have a personal animosity towards him, or?
I just find it really obnoxious how conservatives worship him.
I think he did okay in foreign policy, but I don't know. Like Gorbachev was an idiot, and he did the greatest amnesty in like American history,
I'm gonna
which
put
led
him.
to
I'm gonna
like
put him up
a
with his
lot of
coke.
Latin American.
I'm gonna put him up with
Oh, go ahead.
his coke and patriots.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm gonna go Bush, Reagan, Carter.
Okay.
Um,
I think Carter's better than Reagan. I don't know. Do you think Reagan gets points for economic prosperity in the 80s
yeah, I
over the
guess.
stagflation?
Yeah.
Because most of the time when the conservatives argue about Reagan being high, it's because of prosperity in the 80s.
Right.
But at the same time, he was against the reforms of at the Federal Reserve at that time, which led to that prosperity.
F tier.
I think it's pretty good the way it is. Do you think
I
that
kind
Obama
I
is better than Bush, or do you think Bush is better than Obama?
uh Obama caused the refugee crisis. Okay, that's my reordered.
You're gonna push. You're gonna push Franklin Pierce above them.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
meme, for the memes. Someone
Okay.
says E tier just because of Reagan Republican. Um, okay, so I think we're in agreement that I think we're in agreement the three worst presidents are Obama, Bush, and
My
Johnson.
three worst, I still put Buchanan as number one. I agree with most mainstream historians. I had Buchanan as the worst, then Johnson, then Pierce, but it might be Obama. I don't remember right now.
To be fair,
It's hard
this
to choose between Obama
I
and Pierce.
feel like Johnson took wrecked the situation more versus inheriting a bad situation like Pierce and Buchanan. Like Pierce and Buchanan didn't really inherit a great situation, whereas like Bush took the '90s and just like just like drove it into the ground with no survivors. Like everything was a
I don't know.
disaster.
Like my childhood is defined by like Bush hate. It was so intense at that time.
I admit I briefly kind of liked Bush just because the people who opposed Bush were such F slurs. But
But is there anything positive? You like the thing is like everybody's like, don't be mean against Pierce because his life was so terrible. He was so unlucky. You need to be sad for him. It's like with Bush, it's like, is anybody like out there being like, no, Bush better? I guess like one guy's like Bush better, but like, what did he do that was good?
he had the most power of any post-war American president to fundamentally reshape society, and he invaded Iraq and passed the Patriot Act. Like, the Bush years. But
Also, he led to the Great Recession.
okay, the single worst thing that Bush ever did is we didn't need like America didn't even get the
What were you
oil.
saying?
America didn't even get the oil. Like if he had have
Did I
invaded,
lose the internet?
uh, maybe. Um, Okay, maybe you're lagging. But I was just gonna say, I think the worst thing Bush did was that they didn't get the oil. Like, if Bush was gonna invade Iraq and take the oil and turn it into like an economic colony of the U.S. Based, but it turned
My
into.
internet shot the bed for a second, so I'm back.
Okay, I was just saying the worst aspect of Bush was that they didn't take the oil from Iraq. I was
Isn't that like, I don't know.
like if they had
Yeah,
a
that's not even, they didn't even do that.
like if you're gonna invade
They didn't
Iraq,
even make Iraq into a puppet country or something
like if
like
they were gonna invade Iraq and
they
take the
like made
oil,
Iraq a puppet of Iran.
like if they were gonna invade it, turn it into like a satellite state and just steal all the oil, like based. But instead, we just got
Well, now
like
they like ethnically cleanse the Christians, Yazidis, and Medina, Mandan. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. The Gnostics, and then made Iraq into a puppet state of Iran.
uh it was bad. Like also just the incompetence of the Iraq war. Like didn't they give away like $20 billion in cash to like random people or like I
They
remember
literally paid off the militias as part of their withdrawal strategy. Just
demobilizing
to
the
pay off
Iraqi
the enemy
army.
militias to not wage campaigns for a few years so it would look like they won for a while.
Like demobilize firing the entire civil service and army and not taking their guns away first. That was a good idea. I think that's
We need
part.
to occupy a country of 26 million people or 30 million people with 100,000 soldiers. That was a good idea.
I mean, they had to have just taken the oil fields and extracted the oil. Like that, at least would have been of some benefit to the
I
American
don't know.
people.
Remember how like the first Bush had like 500, 600,000 soldiers plus Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the the Kuwaiti resistance and Britain and France helping. And then Bush is like, yeah, we have 150, 100,000 people. We're going to occupy them now.
Remember when Bush
That's
called it the mother of all coalitions? Do you remember Mission Accomplished?
yes.
Also, I think I really don't like that they executed Saddam. I think that was really petty, but
I mean, that's a tradition now for America at this point since World War II.
like so
That's a
before
Nuremberg tradition.
before we wrap this up, why do you think they invaded Iraq?
Why do I think they invaded Iraq?
Yes.
I think. Have you seen the things on the daily or the daily or weekly briefings on the Iraq War given to George W. Bush?
No.
They have like Bible quotes all over them and stuff.
No.
Okay, you should try and look them up and like put them in to just show like the chat. It's insane.
So he thought that they tell him like it would bring about the.
They would put like Bible quotes. It's really weird. I don't know. I'm trying to find. Yeah, Iraq War briefings headline with biblical quotes reports U.S. Magazine. This is the Guardian, but
Like why though? Why did they do that?
I don't know. Maybe like Bush really was that stupid. As like all the memes at the time from the Democrats. Oh, there's a picture of one. It's bizarre, but I don't know. I mean,
Nobody
I
does.
I think it's mainly that he invaded because of like he was trying to show his father who was boss. I think it was some kind of like insecurity issue with his dad. That's what I believe.
Well, I think we covered everything. Thank you
Wait, you
very.
didn't say why you think it happened.
Um,
I think it's an insecurity with his dad, but
I have no idea actually.
Okay.
I
Do you
I
think he was hearing voices?
I that makes as much sense as anything. Like just nothing about any of that makes sense. I kind of think that so it makes so little sense. I kind of think Israel was involved because I can't honestly think of any other like
But I
reason.
don't even think it benefited Israel. Like, it's better to have an established state than have like chaos. Like they want to have like I think it's a meme of like conspiracy theorists to say it's Israel because like Israel had an outsized influence over the U.S. government through the Israel lobby, but like Israel doesn't like infidelity or however you properly pronounce it. They like peace with Egypt. They like peace with Jordan. They like strong men who are not anti-Jewish. That's what they like in the Middle East. They don't like unlimited race war in Iraq, with Iraq becoming a puppet state of Iran. Are you still there, or did the internet cut out
No,
again?
I'm still here.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't even. Maybe we should just talk about that in its own video, actually.
Yeah, we could do a video at some point about the Iraq War. Like, just anyways. So I think that about covers it. Thank you very much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to do
Oh,
a stream
thank you.
together for a while.
Yeah.
Everybody, please check out Serp's channel and subscribe. He does great content. He puts a lot more effort into his videos than I do. Um, but he's done some really good stuff lately. I mean, if you ever wanted to know about autogynephilia, like he's your man. He knows all about sexual mistargeting. Uh, Weird sedevacantism stuff with Bishop Took, and some stuff about dinosaurs.
See you, King. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. God bless, man. Well, thank you very much. Everybody have a good evening. And